We are having Jerry Gidel to bring his WASDE report projections and his analysis on this significant drop in corn and soybean prices. On Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. If you are new here, please make sure you subscribe. Hello, Jerry. So soybeans have dropped 2 digits today, and also we have seen another drop on corn. What's that all about?
Well, we came in this week with a building optimism about things, and we had some very, I think we mentioned earlier in the week that the wheat really had grabbed everybody's attention and it pushed up against some major numbers, and corn kind of came with it, and that kind of stuff. And then we maybe got a little overbought. I think there was some producer marketings here in the US. And then in the middle part of the week, of course, you get a little profit taking, and then we ended up having some commentary jumping into the market here with some interesting adjustments in South America, and particularly Brazil's uh, uh, offers for the December contract. Yes, we've heard some and seen some pretty good jumps in Brazil's plantings and things like that, but I'm not sure how aggressive the Brazil can be. They can offer a good basis. Problem is, I'm not sure they can deliver it to have enough beans down there. But that offer of actually slightly below the U.S. here for December really caught the trade off guard, and the soybeans have tumbled pretty hard since that midday situation there on values. Uh, Midweek, and we've had a couple of days of taking the beans all the way back down to kind of support.
Yes, I can tell you that it's not impossible. In one occasion, several years ago, the harvest started by Christmas time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the interesting part of it is you got to get it from where your harvest is to the coast and have it there for a boat. And if you're selling basis in December, you got to have a beans harvested in the boat, and that's an interesting twist. But right now, I think there's some gamemanship going on, and Brazil wants to make sure that nobody undercuts them there and their opportunity to sell things. So that's not surprising. But right now, we've got a USDA report for next week.
Yes, and what are you estimating for the next report?
Well, of course, the quite a range sometimes going into these sports, but I'd have to say that the tightness that from like a 176 to like a 177 and a half is 1.5, 2 bushel difference there on the corn is pretty narrow. The average trade guess from Reuters is 176.9 on corn, up just 4/10 of a bushel. I'm kind of concerned that maybe there's still going to be some issues here in the Eastern Corn Belt that might slip that level back down towards 176. But in general, the other big feature that's really been involved in the corn this particular time is what's going to be happening with the ethanol numbers. The demand side of this supply demand is going to be also looked at very closely as we are getting the corn harvest is moving past 60%. Actually, we're up to 74% this week. The market's attention goes to the demand side. We really had an impressive performance in the U.S. ethanol output. It went from lackluster in the last 5 to 6 weeks up to near record levels. And so I suspect the USDA might maybe increase their demand by 50 million. From there, corn, we're ahead of last year's corn numbers on sales because of two big purchases from China this last spring and summer, and so it's a scenario where I don't know if they're going to increase it, but I think that they definitely will not decrease it. So I'm kind of looking for a number actually with a smaller crop and maybe an increase in one of those demands on particularly on ethanol, we could have a number of like 1.4 billion. That's down 100 million, but the trade's not in my favor. They're looking for a 1.48.
Yeah, when with crude oil reaching $79 a barrel, do you think there will be a follow-up by the biofuel markets?
Well, that's the twist we've had when a lot of this thing was really zinging along here in the U.S. and expanded. We were up at 85, $86 a barrel. We have backed off in the crude oil, but I think the overall situation on crude and in general, the ethanol areas are going to be real strong. Yet, because of the difference between the value of ethanol versus the value of gasoline, that's just getting extra money in your pocket if you pour in something that's 50 to 75 cents cheaper than the price of what you're selling it at the retail pump. And so I think that's one of the factors that's going to help ethanol stay strong. Now, the other big feature we've been talking about here a lot in the last month has been the biodiesel and particularly renewable diesel. And that's really firmed up the soybean oil and all the veg oils around the world and that. And it's actually prompted people to think that, you know, in the energy world too, that the impact of that to higher costs on fertilizer has really put a lot more ideas into the expanded soybean possibilities for next year. But let's look at this year's situation a little bit closer. The average trade guess here is for another 0.4 of a bushel higher at 51.9. From there, that's going to be about 35 to 45 million more beans in the pocket. Last month, we had moved our carryover stock up to 320 million from way back in August when we were looking at the whole crop, we were 180. So things have definitely increased on the carryover stock. And that's part of the reason the soybean market has been vulnerable to setbacks, which we've had again this week with this talk of maybe some more competition from Brazil. And that the real twist of it too is adding to it is that we are behind the general trend, if you will. It's called the kind of pace analysis. If you look at the 2.09 or 2.1 billion worth of exports for the year, there's usually a seasonal pattern to that. And so you take that 5-year average pace and you put it in there, and we're actually closer to 80 to 90 million behind pace. So there's a lot of people anticipating that they're going to decrease the U.S. export sales or export projection here in the U.S. on the WASDE report on next Wednesday's update too. So you maybe have a situation of going up. I've been looking at 380 million and potentially it could be as high as 400 million. And that's not helping the psychology of the soybean market here with that kind of concerns about both an increase in production and maybe a decrease in demand.
Well, I have talked a lot with Michael Zuzlo about the inflation, and given that scenario of higher inflation and all of the things we talked today, what's your marketing approach?
Well, that's the twist on the marketing side of things. Inflation is based upon higher cost and maybe some scarcity of things along the way, and that the twist of that is that you have to have some scarcity, and the soybean side of things isn't in that, at least in the short term, is not really revealing that. Now things could change in South America. La Nina is still out there, and it could be a big factor, particularly in Argentina and maybe Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. And those are the features to make things less production out there and maybe get more things going. I think the inflation scenario is a lot stronger in the corn market here, and the impact of that inflation, the rapid twist that's happened here in the energy world and all the things that revolve around it has been pretty dramatic here. We were limping along here for 18 months, and then all of a sudden people are optimistic that the U.S. situation is turning. Also, we had the last year smaller crops. China had issues in their crop scenario when they were big buyers and so that's a situation where on the corn side, if the higher fertilizer costs, higher and that comes actually by the fact that natural gas is a major producer, a major factor in producing anhydrous ammonia, which is the primary source of U.S. nitrogen, and even around the world, that's a factor out there too. But it's a situation where you look at that corn areas, and there's even a situation here where the USDA came up with some very interesting forward contract or forward-looking ideas for the 2022 crop size, and they slipped back corn because of the high cost of inputs from fertilizer and herbicides and probably seed and all that. So it's going to be still an important factor on the corn side, and also the fact that right now corn's still a pretty inexpensive feed source. Wheat's been quite the leader here over the last now 6 or 8 weeks. It's went back up to the high side of its its high side of its price ranges from last spring. So people aren't going to be feeding wheat again like they did early in the summer.
There you have it. Thank you, Jerry.
You bet. And always good to talk with you. And we will be back at it next week.